when I woke up in the morning of January 6th, I viewed the day as one where it would be a celebration of democracy, because that day was the day that we would take the electoral votes, certified electoral votes counts of the states, and turn over in the paperwork to the Senate and those votes in a joint constitutional convention. So little did I know what was about to transpire. And I knew that there would be the gathering in front of the White House, just the hours, maybe an hour before that actual joint convention was going to be formed, and the gavel was going to be hit by the vice president. But I didn't realize, even with those crowds, that it was going to turn the way it was. I was in a position where, because of the COVID-19 requirements and the distancing we're doing to try and keep government running and ourselves safe as we're conducting business, we would rotate in and out of the Capitol numbers of people so that we all weren't there at the same time, which we normally would be. And I was walking to the Capitol at that time, and the alarms started going off in my phone. We have security alarms and alerts on our phones, live time. And I began to see first the Madison building of the Library of Congress being evacuated, then the Cannon House office building, immediate evacuation. This wasn't a drill for House members, staff, everyone. Get out of that building now. Something I've never encountered since I've been there. And they were being formed back in the Rayburn building where my office is, and I was leaving from. And then I got an alert immediately to shelter in place. Stop whatever I was doing, get back to your office, shelter in place. And these are extraordinary things to see alerts on. Never before had I seen anything like this. So I knew it was pretty serious. And I went back, and again, the reports were startling. The Capitol had been breached. They were into the offices. They were into the House floor, the Senate floor, trying to interrupt the peaceful transfer of government, physically trying to just stop it from happening. We had certain security things that, again, we drilled for that I never thought would come into place. But it wouldn't have been sufficient. You saw the films where they actually physically broke down the doors of the speaker's own office and ransacked it. And so a lot goes through your mind during that. Honestly, one of the things that went through my mind, and it was reinforced by the Capitol police officers I talked to later on in the aftermath of this, they were seeking hostages. They wanted members as hostages. You saw the films where they had the zip ties that are used for handcuffs. No one brings that to a peaceful rally. You saw the fact that they were using metal rods, bats, but perhaps you didn't see the reports where they found 18 jars of napalm. There was two pipe bombs right down the street, I think as a distraction, and one in the building. There were automatic weapons and rounds of weapons found. The Capitol Police told me that a lot of people in the building had weapons that breached the security. So it was a lot that went through your mind. One of them going through my mind, reasoning this out, was, how's this going to end? And in the end I was afraid of was there would be hostages and a standoff. And the Capitol Police told me, as they were experiencing this and listening to people, that's exactly what was being planned. They had constructed a functional gallows with a noose up, and some of them were going to hang these hostages, which would have been members. So pretty chilling stuff. That some of it's public, some of it is working its way out. It was an incredible and frightening event. Members were sheltered away. Some, had taken weapons, makeshift weapons in their own office to defend the pounding at the doors. And it was a day, and it's a day we're still hopeful that, again, those officers that are recovering from their injuries and didn't have a chance to recover from their trauma, they had to go right back the next day to work. and some of them that I spent a lot of time talking with endured unbelievable physical and vicious, personal attacks. The Black Capitol Police officers told me personally what was happening to them in the midst of this attack. And I don't want to repeat a lot of what happened, but they showed enormous restraint not to escalate it. I think there could have been so many more people that were killed if they had reacted a different way. Two of them, one directly, one indirectly lost their lives. 5 lives were lost. People were injured. The injuries were horrific. That a lot of things weren't reported. Acid to people's faces and to police officers' faces and things, awful things. And the videos that have now come out, I think, give the people a glimpse just how serious this was and how intended it was to actually stop the peaceful transfer of power, the bedrock of our democracy, which again was startling. We didn't, even with the turmoil that's been in place for the last few years, never did you think it would take this form and this directly, this direct attack to physically stop it from happening, the way these things happen in other countries that we would see, where someone comes in and they're trying to take over the government. They're taking over, the office buildings and the places of government. They're trying to stop, members, whether it be parliamentary members in those countries or members of Congress here, from being the instruments of government that they also are to move our democracy the way you're supposed to procedurally. Extraordinary and sad things that I saw in the during that time and in the aftermath of that time. So it was shocking. It remains shocking. My colleagues and myself, to different degrees, are still dealing with many of these issues. The Capitol Police officers, clearly, that were in the front line, and the District of Columbia Police did a terrific job trying to back up. The National Guard that came in and fortified things. All of those groups bring security, deeply appreciated, but certainly there'll be a review of how that happened. I don't think it'll happen again in that way, but a direct attack trying to stop our democratic procedures for a peaceful transfer of power from occurring will be a day that historically, sometimes in history you don't realize what's happening while it's happening, but I think people understand, historians are already saying, this will be a sad and infamous historical day, January 6th, in the US history. And as a result, something else that was never, I think, considered by people, a second impeachment occurred because the president, and these are the words of a Republican House Leader, Liz Cheney, the president, he orchestrated this event. He had planned it, he assembled the people, and then he lit the flame, for the attack, in her words. And so I think many people realized that and felt that something has to be done, not just now that we have a transfer of power, but in the future. If someone is that involved in setting forth an insurrection against the country, and this just wasn't that day. You have to understand that after the election, even before the election, President Trump was telling people he didn't think the election would be free and fair, the bedrock of democracy. Then after the election, he began to say it wasn't, and there was fraud. And he took 60 legal cases, which is everyone's prerogative in our system. There's nothing wrong with doing that. He took 60 different legal challenges in the courts and was 0 for 60, including cases in front of his own appointed judges. And then he had other states like Georgia did 3 different hand recount processes because people had doubts. And in the words of his own person that oversaw the elections, this ended up being one of the in the middle of a pandemic, one of the safest and most secure elections we had. There was not those evidence that any fraud ever resulted in the outcome of this election. It wasn't even close. So when that didn't work, it was the president that started in his rallies and speeches saying January 6th, January 6th. If they were having a rally of people that did not think the elections were fair, you typically in Washington, you have those rallies on the weekend, you get a big crowd, but he picked that day. And then he had his rally in front of the White House just an hour before the actual transfer of the vote and urged the people to go up the street and stop it from happening. I mean, so his actions were clear. And this impeachment in the House had the highest number of, highest bipartisan impeachment in our history. So it's on to the Senate. We'll see what the Senate does at this juncture as we're having this conversation. But I think the impeachment was a pretty clear cut one in terms of why it occurred. If it's not going to be for that, then why do you have the impeachment process? If it's not for this standard, that's really separates it even so much from the past impeachment that we had.